Hey Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Simon. Lovely to see you today.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much for making some time to come on the show and share your story. I'm really excited to sort of chat to you and get to the heart of some of the amazing things you've done.
Perfect. Happy to share.
Cool. Now, I know we're going to talk a little bit about your business, Alpha Translations, which is pretty exciting. Maybe you could just kick off for us and give us a little of your background and what kind of led to you starting that business.
Yes, actually, I would love to. Interestingly enough, it involves somebody in Australia. Um,
Ah,
so yeah, when I was in university, and I had just I had my two daughters very young, and I was still in school, and I wanted to start doing translations because my background was half German, half Canadian. My parents moved back and forth between both countries, so I grew up fully bilingual. And as a result of that, I loved languages and it was my passion. I started translating books in university. And then as I graduated, I was reading a story about a translator in Australia who had clients in the US. And because of the time difference, she would, go to the beach, swim, do all the fun stuff till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when her US clients woke up. And that's when she would get to work. And I thought that was just such a brilliant concept. And at the time, so I finished university, my kids were small, 2 and 3 years old, and we were living in Germany and about to move from Germany to Alberta, Canada, which is an 8-hour time difference. Alberta, Canada being 8 hours behind Germany. So translations are always urgent and always an afterthought. So that Australian story really inspired me to say, hey, I had a couple clients and I said, look, I know you love working with me. I'm going to make this even easier for you. This is 1993. And I
yep.
say to them, look, there is this amazing invention. It's called a fax machine. So you can just, right? For those of your listeners who remember what that even is.
Yeah, my
Um,
kids would be saying, "What is that?"
what is that? It was thermal paper fax on a
Yeah.
roll, and you have to like straighten it out and cut it and all of that fun stuff. But it was revolutionary. And so this was 1993, and I said, "Look, you can still use me as your translator, and actually, it's even better because at 5 o'clock your time, when you're about to go home, you fax me your translations. It's 9 a.m. I have all day. You'll get better quality. I'm awake. I'm not sleepy. You'll have it the next morning." And
Yeah.
people just loved it. My clients loved it. So off we went with my two children, my husband, and set up shop here in Canada and started doing translations for large companies. And
Cool.
we grew from there. It was, my purple cow, and nobody was doing what I was doing
Yeah.
at the speed, at the service, at the price, at the convenience. And so that was the start of Alpha Translations.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, how old were you at this point in time?
Well, I don't know. Are your viewers going to do the math here on me?
Oh, I should never have
No,
asked
I
that, should
was.
I? You were just out of college, were you? Is it?
I'm joking. No, I had my kids when I was 12. No, no. I think I was 25 or 26 at the point. At
Yeah,
that point.
cool,
I was
cool.
still.
I mean, that's a relatively young age and getting out there and doing your own thing. So that's exciting, and I'm fascinated with this the whole translation piece because one of the things I've found when I've spoken to people who do translations is they've talked to me a lot about the differences between kind of regular social language versus having to write for business and law and things like that. And I mean, can you share a bit of that? I mean, is that did you find the same thing? Is it what's it like?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So while I started translating books in university because I loved languages and I studied in Germany, I studied languages, political science, and law. So kind of both on that, spectrum. And so because I had my law studies, I didn't graduate as a lawyer. I realized after 8 semesters it wasn't for me. But what I did have was the understanding of how it worked and how to express myself in a legal environment.
Yeah.
So I just happened to start working for a large car manufacturer in Europe, and I mentioned that, my background, so they started sending me all the legal translations as well as the business translations. So it kind of evolved naturally, and as I eventually grew the business and offboarded myself from translating, which is a whole other fascinating story, it became more and more specialized in legal translation, and it is definitely a whole different ball game, right? It is really the responsibility, the legal lingo, the legal language, but also understanding the lawyers, understanding your clients, their lives, like the pressures that they have are much different, and understanding what's at stake.
Yeah.
Some of these are, $100 million more deals, confidentiality, publicly traded companies. It's critical. It's very different from just translating socially.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I guess if there's ever an area where you need to be very precise with your language, it's the law, right? But, so you mentioned you had a large auto company. Was there any kind of trend in the sort of industries or backgrounds or styles of companies you worked with, or was it kind of just really broad?
Well, I guess what you focus on expands, right?
Yes.
So because I had an in with the automotive company, because at that time my husband worked there, it just kind of went along from there. But because I had such a unique service that really hardly anybody in Germany offered at the time, I just got referred. And so I logically then got referred to other automotive companies. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, we worked with all the big ones. But then something interesting happened is as I got more into working with different companies, they would basically get me to work with their legal departments. The legal departments would then work with outside law firms. And so the outside law firms would say, wow, you guys provide really fantastic translations. It really helps our lawyers. Where are you getting them done? And then they said it was Alpha Translation. So that's how we got into the law firms. And by the time I sold, we were working for, I think, close to 60 of the top 100 global law firms.
Wow. Okay, that's great. And so how do you engage these guys? I mean, it starts off with a project or two, but was it just like, was there enough work that it was just ongoing and flowing? What was your model? I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it was just because we had this really unique value proposition that nobody else had. And then we were one of the first adopters, 1996, 97, when the internet came out. And yeah. I remember uploading files on Z modem and, all the fun sound that came with that. And working with my clients to get them, involved in it. So that was definitely an interesting time to build that. And I'm sorry, can you just repeat the questions? I think I may have gone off on a bit of a tangent there, Simon.
No, that's all right. I was just talking about your model. So clearly people just start sending you work, but was it more sort of ad hoc project based, or did you, how did you grow the business? Did you shift the model? Was there any sort of subscription? What did all that sort of stuff look like?
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. So at the beginning, yes, we had law firms and we had other companies too. We got recommended and it flowed. And then eventually we added some salespeople. So it wasn't just me, although I did enjoy flying from Canada to Germany and, going back to where I grew up and selling and visiting customers and growing the business. It was one of my favorite things to do. And it's what I ended up doing the most of throughout my career. But the model was just, what I had was not that available. And being able to deliver it at a reliable service, because you had to be on time. Deals would fall through if things were not on time. Yep. And we really got referred. So at the beginning, to get back to your question, we grew by referrals. Yeah. I was like under 30 years old. I didn't know how to build a sales force. I didn't know how to build a business. I just did it, right? So I kind of learned by doing. And then eventually we added salespeople and well, first we added translators because that was the first thing I needed to stop doing.
So when did you hire your first translator? How far into the business were you at that point?
Do we have time for a story?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So I imagine this is about 1995. No, it's about 1996. And I'm coming down in the morning to start my work. I grab my coffee, I look into my office, and there is the entire floor covered with rolls and rolls of thermal fax paper.
Wow.
And I'm looking at this and I should be so happy. All of the hard work that I've put in is just really paying off. Business is literally rolling in.
Yeah.
And instead of being really excited, my heart just sinks. Because I know this is another 20-hour day.
Yes.
I'm translating this. I know this is another day where my husband puts the kids to bed. I know this is another day where I don't get to see them and play with them. And I'm frustrated. But I've started this. The business needs me. Without me, there is no business. So I got to hustle through. And when I finally finish, it's 2 a.m. I got to print everything out, fax it back, wait for the send confirmation because nothing was instant before I could go to bed. And so I go and I check my messages. Okay. I listen to the answering machine and it goes, beep. Hi, this is Cynthia, your nail tech. This is the third appointment you've missed this month. If you want to keep having, an appointment with us, you will need to provide a credit card or find a different service.
Oh, yep.
Next message. Beep. Hi, this is Dr. Schulte's office. You missed your checkup today. Please be advised that we have a wait list. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't remember any of it because I was just heads down in work. The last message, my friend. Hey, babe, it's Cindy. We were supposed to meet for coffee. I haven't seen you in 2 months. I hope you're okay. And I just broke down. I just started crying. I'm like, I'm getting fired from my own life. That's what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I went upstairs and looked at my girls and they're sleeping and just peacefully, and I missed it again. And that's when I decided, it's like, I can't go on like this. Yeah. I love my business, but I don't want to work 20-hour days. I love my girls, but I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I decided, why can't I have both? I deserve to have both. My kids deserve for me to have both. And I don't want them to fire me from their lives when they grow up.
For sure.
So that's when everything shifted. I started hiring translators. I started offboarding myself from being a translator. It was a process. But, within a couple of months, I went from feeling frustrated, anxious, and stuck to feeling happy, free, and fearless to grow my business. I went from not having time with my kids to playing with them every night.
Yeah,
it was
nice.
amazing.
Yeah. When you started hiring people, how did you feel about that? Because I mean, obviously, in hindsight, you got freedom, you got all these wonderful things. But I've, you speak to a lot of business owners out there who their concern is that, hey, if I suddenly start hiring people, I'm going to be paying all these people so much money. There's not much margin left. How much am I still going to be able to earn? Am I going, so there's this, and of course, there's a whole bunch of other potential issues that come with hiring people, right? So talk to me about that. What was your experience like?
Well, I did the math. I knew that if I worked, even 20 hours, first of all, that wasn't sustainable. But even if I worked 10 hours a day, I knew how much I could make a month and a year. Yep. And it was, I didn't want to trade my time for money. That's not why I started the business. That's not why most entrepreneurs start the business. Yet that somehow ends up the norm, and it ends up that's what people do. So I did the math. I knew, okay, if I can do this, the money's mine, minus a little bit of overhead. But if I hire translators, I can make 10, 20, 100 times as much. Yep. And even if I give up half of my margin, that's still 50 times more than I'm making now. And I'm not sitting at my desk getting fired for my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And so how long did you started the company? How long did you run it for?
I ran it for 25 years.
Wow.
Pretty much
And,
exactly.
yeah, wow. And over that period, how big did it grow to?
Okay. So we had, I sold to a publicly traded company, so these numbers are publicly available, so I'm allowed to share.
Good. Yep.
Our revenues were around 5 million-ish, give or take. And I sold it for, and this is Canadian dollars, and then I sold it for 8 million in cash, so 6 million USD.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so about 5 million in revenue. Can you remember offhand sort of well, actually, I was going to ask you about Ebitda, but how did they come up with the price?
Well, I had come up with a price, and by the way, like there was this pivotal moment when I just knew, right? So I had built this amazing company over 25 years. I offboarded myself first from translating, then I offboarded myself from operations. I hired, to your previous question, I hired a COO really early on, and a lot of my peers and entrepreneurs and mentors and coaches told me I was crazy. It's like, what are you doing? You can do all of these things yourself and have that money. Why are you paying? And I said, well, I was a single mom at that time with 2 kids, and I'm like, yeah, but I can always make more money, but I can never make more time. And my kids are going to grow up. So, I'm making enough money, and this would get an opportunity for the business to grow, which is what we did.
Yep.
So I remember this pivotal moment. I had offboarded myself. I was living the life of my dreams. Like, I had time with the girls. I was doing sales. I was doing strategy, all the things that I loved. And it was one day in July 2018. And GDPR in Germany was a pain in my side, or in Europe, but most of our clients were in Germany. Yep. Machine learning, AI, Google Translate, all of those things were requiring massive investment to stay competitive. And it was after 25 years, and I was like, I'm going to get pulled back in big time, and I'm going to get pulled back in financially. I need to make some massive investments to stay competitive. And I didn't have the energy to do it. Like, I just dreaded it. I went back to feeling stuck, anxious, and frustrated. Yeah. And I didn't want to, like, I had built this beautiful life. And I remembered the next morning when I got up, and I remember talking to a peer who'd sold his business. So, talking to people who have done it is one of the most valuable things in the world. And I remember asking him, how do you know that it's time? And he said, Michelle, when you get up and you dread going to the office, you'll know.
Yeah.
When you look yourself in the mirror and feel drained and don't have the energy, you'll know. When you really listen to yourself, you'll know. And I knew. And yep. That's when I made the decision. And so I went out and I found a broker within the industry. I didn't engage a traditional investment banker or business broker, just because I wanted to see. I had lots of people who were connected. I knew there was a lot of acquisition going on in our industry, which, is true for some industries and not for others. But I knew that was a great asset because there was so much consolidation going on. And so we put the memorandum out in August, got an offer in October, and the deal closed in January. So all within 5 months.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, and that's a good time frame. I mean, it's I often get asked how long transactions take, and I'm my usual response is, look, 6 to 9 months is fairly typical. It can take longer, it can take shorter. We've done business sales in sort of a couple of months, but it's not the norm. And so I think people going into that kind of process often underestimate what's involved in actually selling and finding the right buyer and negotiating the right deal, and even due diligence, how long that can take.
Oh.
So
yeah. Due diligence is a whole other story, right?
Yeah. So the buyer, were they the first offer that you got?
No, I had a couple of other offers, but I really wanted to sell to them. Yeah. I knew the industry; they were one of the favorite companies, and what was really important for me when I was so frustrated, I knew that it needed a bigger player to create the systems to invest in the AI to, more easily get over all the privacy legislation from a cost and infrastructure and process perspective. But mainly it was the race for the best technology that I felt I would have a really hard chance winning if I stayed on my own. And so they came in, they were a publicly traded competitor. They were the one I wanted to sell to when I thought about it. When I talked to my broker first, who would you want to sell to? They were my number one. Mm-hmm. And when their offer came, I was clear. I didn't want an earn out. I didn't want to be part of the company. I just wanted to walk away, and that's what they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, so talk to me a little bit about your ideal buyer. What kind of was going through your head there? What were some of the factors that made you think they're the right candidate?
Okay. Well, one, company culture was really important to me. So what I had built and set up, I had removed myself from the business, which, by the way, allowed me to sell at a premium. Yeah. Even though we didn't own IP, even though we didn't have subscription, I know you asked that before. We did try and implement that. It was quite difficult, just the way our clients were structured. It's easier when you have like a corporate structure to do that. With law firms, it's hard because they're often very decentralized. Yeah. And I'm sure that's probably the case for a lot of your viewers as well. So we didn't have IP, we didn't have subscriptions, we didn't have, anything that would really tie the customers to us, except that, our top 80%, like our top 20% of customers, which it's always true, brought in 80% of revenue, had been with us for almost 2 decades. And yes, we had new ones, but the retention rate was really high. And it was because of the service we provided, because of the expertise we had, and because I made a strategic decision at one point to say, we are going to focus on law firms and not go after any other clients. So that really created a niche for us, being very clear where we fit. And I was not involved. I didn't own any relationships with the clients. I didn't, go out prospecting. Yes, I would go visit our long-standing clients, but that was almost more like a personal visit. Yeah. Right? So everything ran without me.
Yep. That's fantastic. And I could just put you up here now to talk to all my clients and say, see, it's not just me saying this, So, you've run a business for 25 years. There must have been some employees that have been with you for a fairly long time. And, you must have got pretty close to some of these people, I imagine.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? Did you talk to any of the employees when you were getting ready to sell, or was that part of the thinking as you were considering buyers?
Yeah, that was really, really hard. It was really hard. Because we were such a close-knit team, but we were also global. So we had project managers working from home all over the world in different countries, in different time zones, in different cultures. So the team in the actual office was quite small. So that was an advantage in keeping it quiet. However, of course, so my COO, who really worked as my right hand and supported me in everything I did and really loved the company. And our company culture was open. It was open book policy. Everybody knew revenue, profit, goals, KPIs. We shared all of that with everybody. So keeping something away from people was incredibly difficult. Especially from our office manager, the EA, the people in the office. I did tell my COO early on because obviously I needed her. But then with all the work that due diligence entails, we had to tell other people in the office. And it, obviously we didn't know if the deal was going to go through. Of course, we hoped it would. I talked to other entrepreneurs, don't rock the boat too much. People get worried. You don't want people to leave and all of those things. So that was probably the hardest thing to do, to the point where the Christmas party that year, 2018, nobody wanted to have it. Like the people who knew didn't want to have it because they didn't want to be in the same room with the people who didn't know.
Yeah.
And then I was forcing them to lie, which
Yeah,
was
that's
really
hard.
awful. So we just didn't have it that year. We said we'll do it in January, which, then we had the sale celebration and people understood why.
Yeah, okay. And how did people take it in general?
I think they took it well. It was really important for me to sell to a company where I liked the culture, right? There's some companies, they're going to tear it apart and do this. And this company in particular had a really fantastic track record. People who had been acquired by them said they were fair. The transaction, the offer, working with them, everything was fair and above board.
Cool.
And so I could believe when they said, we're not going to tear everything. I mean, obviously over the course of time things change, but
Yeah.
it was really great. And then I believe, a lot of people are still with the company and so yeah, that made me feel really good. But yeah, it was really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. We've sold professional services companies, and I've found in most cases there's usually one, two, half a dozen people that are really, really important to the business, particularly when the owner has worked their way out of the operations.
Yeah.
And so a couple of a lot of the deals that we've done in that space have had a contingency, a condition precedent sort of thing, where the key people had to sign new contracts. It was basically the whole deal was contingent on these people have to come. Did you have anything like that with your COO or anyone else?
No. Let me just think about what I can share and what I can't share.
Yeah. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No.
Without
Don't
going
be
into
sorry.
confidential.
Yeah. No. Can you say that question again?
Yeah, it's just whether the deal was contingent on certain people coming over or coming with the transaction. The COO. Did they say, look, whatever her name might have been, but did they say, look, as a part of this deal, she has to agree to stay with us and sign a new contract and work with us for a minimum period, or something like that?
I'm not sure if I can comment on that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. No, sorry, and I don't mean to drill into things that are
that's
confidential,
totally
but
fine. I just can't share those details of the deal.
No, fair enough. It's always interesting because we had a transaction just recently where the owners were great at building themselves out of the business, and to the point where they could prove to a buyer that even though it was a people business, they didn't need them hanging around. They shouldn't want them hanging around, and that the next tier of leadership were the ones running it. And so that enabled them to walk away without an earnout.
Right.
But we had to, just the last sort of sticking point was just, let's get these three people with their contract in their hand and make sure they've signed. And the guy said, look, we're all done. We're doing this deal, but they just have to sign those employment contracts before we finish. So it's you sort of shift a little bit of
sense.
Yeah, you sort of shift the dependency a little bit from yourself onto those people, which I think can be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people, but it's essential, right? You've got to get yourself out because nobody wants to do a 3-year and out.
Exactly. And, the relationship with the acquisition, with the acquiring company was really such in that they were transparent as well in what they were doing.
Yep.
So, it was just a good fit, and we kind of had an understanding of how it would flow, and my team was on board and their team was on board. So let me just answer it that way.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's so important to have a counterparty, the people on the other side of the table that you feel you can work with and that are reasonable and are considerate of each other's needs. So it's, people who've heard this show a few times would probably be bored with me saying this, but getting deals done is actually quite hard. It's you need willing buyers, willing sellers coming together and developing a lot of trust in a very short period of time, and so there's always a few things that can derail that. But
especially when it's a competitor, it makes it even harder.
Yeah.
If the deal doesn't go through, now you're going to leave the client list till last. Like we did that. They obviously want to talk to our clients, and we're like, okay, well, that's going to be the last thing you're going to do.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
So it's you kind of got to open that kimono bit by bit by bit. So you're not, at the end of the day, standing there stark naked with nothing.
And wondering why everyone else in the room is dressed.
Right? Exactly.
Oh, no, that's funny. Yeah, I'd love to come back to the valuation, the price, the final sort of transaction and settlement, and only, of course, what you can talk about. But I'm curious as to the methodology. How did you guys come up with a number? Did you have a number coming into it and an idea of methodology? Were your expectations met? Was it different? How did that all look?
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. Yes, I did have a number coming into it. And I had a very clear, if I can't get this, then I'm not selling.
Yep.
And so I had that clear line in the sand. I had an ideal number.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this would be really amazing if this could happen number, but it probably won't.
So your minimum expectation number, your oh, hey, this would be a good number, and then you have the blue sky, this would be a brilliant number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
cool.
the number that we ended up with was kind of in between my ideal number and this is brilliant number. So
Excellent.
And I know from the due diligence process, I know that it is attributed to really three things. One is that I had offboarded myself from the business. Two, that, the business in itself really ran, not just without me, but I had systems and processes in place that were logical, that it wasn't just, because back to your other question, you want the key employees to sign. The reason companies want that is mainly because they're not that convinced that your processes are that stable. Yeah. If you have really stable processes and the repeat clients and things just kind of work, then okay, you hope the key employees don't leave, but if they do, the processes are still there, right? So that was the other thing that got me a premium. I was away, and we had clients that, even though we didn't have subscriptions, had year-long recurring revenue. Yeah.
So lots and lots of repeat business. So when you came up with your number, was it a number that you just kind of went, hey, I know this number would suit my lifestyle, or did you have some sort of bit of science behind it? Was there a formula you were using, or?
Yeah, of course. So we did a lot of research in the industry and looking at, because as I'd mentioned, there's so much, still is actually, so much consolidation going on in the translation industry. I mean, at the time that I sold, think about this. At the time that I sold, there was not a single billion-dollar player in the entire language translation industry. Not one. So now there is, and it's actually the company that I sold to, which is really pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there was not. So much consolidation going on. So I looked at other deals. I looked at deals that, the company that acquired me did earlier. I looked at what other numbers were happening in the industry. I looked at how do I compare to those companies being bought. I mean, there was a couple that, a couple of outliers that were getting 20% Ebitda or 20 times Ebitda.
Wow.
But they had IP, they had software, they had, a product that, of course, they could grow. So it was a different story. So for me to get, I think it was almost 7 to 8 times was...
That's Ebitda, was it?
It was 8 times Ebitda, close to 8 times Ebitda.
Wow.
Was above market, and I think it is in most industries, and yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, look, I mean, we see a lot of transactions out there, and it's, look, I think in anybody's language, 8 times Ebitda is pretty good.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that. That's fantastic.
Thanks.
So you no earn-out? No, there's no... Did they ask you to just sort of do some sort of transition, hang around a little bit, make everyone happy?
Yeah. They asked me, would I be willing to stay for 3 months, but I didn't have to. But would I be willing to? And I said, sure, no problem. And they paid me for 3 months, and we kind of worked together for a little while, which was great. And then we each went our own way.
Yeah, cool. And so what are you doing these days? I mean, you've had this amazing sale. Did Did you take a holiday, buy a trophy? Was there any kind of period where you just said, right, I'm going to have some me time now? Or what did that look like?
It's funny. I had 20 years of me time. I traveled 6 months of the year because I offboarded myself, right? I was already living the life of my dreams. So it was almost the opposite. It was weird. Yes, I traveled and, took some time off and really happy not to deal with GDPR or GDRP. I don't even remember what it is.
Blocked it out.
It's like, yeah. And so that was great. We traveled, of course, but it was like, okay, so now I have all this money, but it didn't really mean anything to me, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Like, I worked for all of it, built all of it from scratch, and so I really had no concept what that even meant. Yeah. I mean, yes, paid all the taxes, and then of course, you're not left with $8 million. Let me just put it this way. But you're still left with a substantial amount of money. And it's like, it didn't mean anything to me. Yes, I could do the math. Okay, if I invested this way, I can grow it to this, or I can get X amount of cash flow, all of it. But I remember one night sitting on the couch with my boyfriend, and we're looking for movies. And I'm on Netflix, and he goes to whatever, iTunes, and it's like $6.99, and I'm like, is there nothing free? Why are we spending $6.99 on renting a movie? And he looked at me, he's like, really? And that's how terrified I was of spending a penny of the money that I had worked 25 years for. And so, I talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs who have sold, and they're like, oh yeah, and the freedom, and it was amazing, and finally I could breathe. And I'm like, I can't breathe, I don't have any money. And they're like, so it was that cash flow transition that was difficult for me, and I needed to wrap my brain around it, which, now 3 years later, we're all good. So then I started writing my book, which I had wanted to do. One of the things that I thought about when I decided I'm going to sell, it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Right? I'm still young. I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. Yep. I'm an entrepreneur. What am I going to do? And I knew I wanted to write my book, and I wanted to coach other entrepreneurs to live their best life and offboard themselves from their business so they too could have what I had. Yeah. And so I started writing my book. I became a certified executive coach. And so what I'm doing now is I am coaching very few select clients because I still want to be semi-retired and I don't want to work full time. I also don't want to build a big organization again. Yeah. But I'm scaling it. I'm doing some master classes basically on that subject of how do you get out, stay out, and create more value in your business than you had ever before. So that's what my focus is now, and I'm just loving it. I'm doing more speaking. So I'm having a great time.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's probably one of the most common issues I see, and you clearly see as well. But in that business owners just feel trapped. Not knowing how to get out. And I know anybody who's listening to this episode will be swearing at me saying, Simon, ask Michelle more tips on how I get out of my business. So I don't know if you've got a couple of tips to share with the audience today, but that would be awesome if you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of tips. And actually, I'm very happy to do a free session for anybody who wants to do a free session and show them to roadmap to having it all. Cool. I'm sure you'll put my email address in at the end, but
absolutely. Well, we'll put up all your links. And while we're asking that, before we get to your tips, I mean, just maybe share with us what are the best ways for people to get in contact with you.
Okay. Best way to get in contact with me is Michelle at MichelleHecken.com. That's Michelle with one L, as you can see on the screen. So just MichelleHecken.com is my website, or Michelle at MichelleHecken.com. Super easy.
Cool. And is it okay if people reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Yep. Great. Okay.
LinkedIn, and as also Michelle Hecken. Yeah. Same. I try and keep it simple.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. And as I keep saying on this show, please, if you reach out to Michelle on LinkedIn or otherwise, maybe just put a little note in there saying you heard her on the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast. At least you'll have a little context as to why you're reaching out or contacting, and as Michelle's already said, I'm sure she'll book some time with you. But Michelle, a couple of tips for those people who've come with us all the way through the show would be great.
It happens to me all the time as I'm speaking and I do podcasts and events and I talk to entrepreneurs just like your listeners. And the question I hear the most is, Michelle, can you help me create more value in my business and still live the life of my dreams without burning out? And the answer is yes. And it really comes down to three simple things.
Yeah. Simple in concept.
Simple in concept. So yeah, one lady came to me after a session and she booked the free session and we started on a roadmap. And what we started with is really identifying from an offboarding perspective, identifying all of her responsibilities, the value those responsibilities create for the company. And surprisingly, the things that she loved doing the most, where she spent most of her time, were not necessarily the ones that created the most value. So shifting that paradigm and working around what should I really be focusing on? Because it's one thing to offboard yourself, but if you're just offboarding the stuff that you don't like doing, you're not being really purposeful about it. So I would say number one is, yes, remove yourself, offboard yourself from the business, but do it properly and with purpose and with value creation in mind, because that's what's going to get you the bigger multiple for your business at the end of the day. The second thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand, is empower your people. Offboard responsibilities, not tasks. Because then when you sell and your team is still there, the buyer will also be less worried about the performance of the team, because the team owns the responsibilities, not you, not your COO, everybody in the team. And in order to do that, you've got to be transparent with your company to empower the people. And that is, I think, really, really critical in offboarding yourself. And people say, oh, I got to work on my business. We all drink the Kool-Aid, right? You got to work on your business, not in your business. And it's true, 100%. But people don't know how. And what happens when they try and work on their business is that they start delegating a bunch of tasks. And that feels good because you can get stuff off your plate. But what doesn't feel good is while your plate is empty, your head is full and heavy. Oh my God. Okay, when was that due? When was you? Oh my goodness, I hope this is on time, right? So you delegate more and more to get more off your plate, but you get busier and busier. And so the key to really working on your business is offboarding responsibilities and not tasks. So stop delegating those would be my three things.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Michelle. Thank you. I think even I sit here going, yes, geez, I'm guilty of that, and I've done this. So it's I think we can all kind of look at ourselves and recognise some of those behaviours. So that is awesome. Look, I think we're probably out of time today, but I'm so very, very grateful for you coming on the show and sharing your story, Michelle, and these wonderful tips. I know our listeners will get so much out of it. So thank you very much for making the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me just leave you with this, okay? Picture a day when you have offboarded yourself from your company in a way that you're free. Picture a day where your buyer says to you, the transaction is closed, we've wired the funds into your account. Picture a day where you have the freedom and the means to live the life that you truly dream of. I'll leave you with that.
That's a big dream, all right. Michelle, thanks again for coming on the show. Been a great time, and I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. It was my absolute pleasure, Simon. Thank you so much.